So I suppose just very, very briefly how Together for Christmas came about. Again, quite a simple concept, but we hope will have a big impact for lots of people. So I suppose really where it came about in a nutshell was that last month, and a number of my colleagues actually on the Zoom call tonight and who you're going to hear from, we were discussing one of our other projects called Critical, which is around donations and practical supports for refuges, for women and children affected by domestic abuse or violence. And so we were just having our regular kind of catch-ups about that, and one of my colleagues, Kelly, who's here tonight, was just kind of mentioning about a Christmas campaign. And I suppose then I had said, actually, you know, good timing, because I had wanted to talk to them about a wider Christmas campaign that we could kind of maybe support a number of groups and a number of people who needed it this Christmas. And so I suppose where my kind of thoughts on it were, again, kind of simple enough, but I suppose in the volunteer centre, what we're seeing again is, and our work out in the community and the community forum and stuff, you know, winter was fast approaching. We have less opportunities available to volunteer. That's not just in Ireland, but that's a global issue, because again, lots of programs had to shut. You know, the days are getting darker, we're all less active. And yet we have a fabulous cohort, yourselves included, who are registered with us and are interested, willing, and have lots of skills to offer in terms of volunteering. So I suppose part of it was, how do we connect that? How do we connect volunteers to causes? How do we connect to each other? Because again, you know, we all want to be doing things and making a social impact at the same time. So I suppose that was just one side of it. And then the other end of it was that we know, again, from our partners, from our work in the community, that actually for some people, Christmas, not just Christmas, but this year has been harder because of COVID, on top of challenges that they might already be facing anyway. So, you know, we're all familiar with them, but, you know, in terms of people experiencing loneliness, isolation, maybe pressure cooker environments, we know that domestic abuse and violence has risen. So there's a number of factors in there as well. And so I suppose we just started talking about, you know, maybe we could do something light, nice, impactful for Christmas, that again gets people active, connected, but we also create a social impact. So we just started talking about it, what we could do, what was needed, talking to our partners, finding out what they needed, because again, we wanted it to be based on what people themselves were actually asking for. And so really that's it in a nutshell, and you'll hear more tonight about how you can get involved and some of the partners involved. And again, just thank you so much for joining us.
My role has been changing through COVID-19. I used to work for St. Patrick's Cathedral and unfortunately was laid off, but I was taken on quite quickly by the Ivy Trust, who we had partnered with for the Critical initiative, which supports women and children who are exiting domestic violence. Now, that was something that came about as a discussion with Edwina earlier. You mentioned that, and we launched it on the 3rd of June. And so many of you who are attending here this evening, and many more beyond, who have been supporting that since the 3rd of June, have enabled us to deliver thousands of packages. In fact, I think our last count is probably over the 2050 mark now, and parcels worth no less than €50 per parcel to women and children who are residing within domestic abuse refuges and connected with those services, perhaps through outreach or otherwise. We have many partners in the community, and that includes obviously the Ivy Trust, St. Patrick's Cathedral, and Garda Síochána, particularly Sergeant Ian Lamb in Kevin Street, and the rest of the community policing team there, who assist with distribution on a weekly basis, sometimes several times a week. That has been incredibly moving, because I think it was one of they're calling it the shadow pandemic, which is a very apt name for something that is quite dark. And as we face into a time of what is for many of us a time of cheer, it's awful to think that families are still living in circumstances that are less than savoury. And it was one of the things that had emerged in the initial lockdown phase as something that was really difficult to engage with, but also something that people really had a desire to support and mitigate. And I think that has been incredibly successful to date. The feedback that we're getting is really positive, and that will be continuing, and we will have a second phase in the new year. But obviously the day-to-day needs, we will continue to meet those through this Christmas appeal. And the second piece of work then that I'll be focusing on is the Ivy Trust Men's Hostel. And I know Kristen is going to oblige by looking after the tech side of things. And we're going to watch just an introductory video on that. It was founded in 1905 on the back of the Ivy Trust, which is 1890 was when that was founded. And it was Edward Cecil Guinness who had founded that organisation. And with himself and Lord Royton, who was his very good friend, they designed the men's hostel, which is the largest in the country, and we'll see that video now.
And let's just hope I'll be able to do this as smoothly as I did in the tech run.
We're working for a future where individuals and families have access to a home
that is affordable and part of
a successful,
sustainable community.
For those who need it the most, it is first and foremost a roof over their heads. So safety from the fact that they're in a safe place where they're being cared for, and secondly, safety in the sense that they don't have to worry about where they're going to sleep the next night.
This vast building houses 200 men. It needs a new roof, and we really need people's help to make that happen.
We'd like to get people that are down on their luck maybe in the hostel to get them back into society again.
I was actually walking and I was homeless. Like, I was sleeping in the car park next door to my job. So I was talking to someone one day and he says, what about the Ivy? I said, oh, the Ivy, I forgot all about that. So I was just passing here one day and I dropped in. I said, any rooms are? He said, yeah, something's coming up there. He said, give me a shout. On the Friday, I rang him. I said, what's the crack? He said, yeah, there's a room there if you want to come and have a gander. Nice, up, in, nice, that was it.
Staying here in the Ivy has provided me with the opportunity to go to college. I was in another hostel or other places, there's drinking, drugs, there's fights, there's arguments. You're not guaranteed a good night's sleep. I don't know how I would have made it through it.
It's very important and a place like this stays open because it's run by the salt of the earth, for the salt of the earth.
We really need support financially from people, donations, hand in the pocket, try and get this huge project over the line.
I think that worked.
Thanks so much. It was grand. Thank you so much. That video actually hasn't been aired as yet. Now you can tell it wasn't made today, obviously, because clearly the weather was much nicer when that was made about a month ago. And I suppose it highlights really the difficulties that men often find themselves in. And while Pretty Call addresses the needs of women and children, we're acutely aware that quite often are left out of the conversation about refuge and a place of safety. And there's often an assumption that it's okay to be in a transient hostel. The beauty of the Ivy Trust Hostel is that it houses quite a large number of people. Ordinarily, you'd have 196 men resident each night. One of those beds would be an emergency bed each night. We've reduced the capacity due to COVID to 175, and they have a room of their own. So they have a key to their own door, but they have units where there are shared communal facilities, and they can have a meal in the dining area if they choose to have cooked meals provided for them, and they pay a nominal rent. So there's no getting out at 9 o'clock in the morning and not coming back until later in the day. So I just see a question popped up there. Critical still taking donations on Saturdays. We are, and that will continue up until the 24th of December actually. So thank you for that question. In relation to the men in the hostel and what they might need or require or desire, I think grooming kits would be most appropriate. You know, really nice razors, aftershave, shaving foam, the kind of things that you would give to a brother, a father, an uncle, someone that you really care about. And I suppose when we're giving things to people, we consider the individual that we're receiving. And so if it was our sister or our brother or our father or our mother, what would we like them to receive and what condition would we like to find it in? So new items, obviously we can't give secondhand razors to anybody, and, you know, pack them with care, and your intention comes in behind that, and that's felt by the recipients when they receive those items. And one of the beautiful things that came out of Critical was the letters of hope and courage and the response that we had from recipients due to those. So if you'd like to put in a small note, an anonymized note for the recipient of whatever it is you choose to give, I think that would be a beautiful idea, and it would personalize it. And we'd ask you not to put in your contact details unless it's on a separate piece of paper, which I know you'll be told more about later on, but as a personalized note for the person who's going to receive your gift, I think it would be a nice way for them to feel that somebody has cared enough to pack those items for them. And I think to really connect with the fact that we never know what we're born into. We don't really understand why people end up in the circumstances they're in. They don't necessarily choose to experience difficulties. I don't think any of us would. So it's lovely to be able to realize that people care enough to try and make a difference. And I think, again, this project and working with Dublin City Volunteer cohort, the wider cohort, really enables people to make a difference, and in every way. And just to add to Edwina earlier on, I brought my Christmas jumper as well. So I brought the Christmas pudding this evening for the cheer. And I suppose, again, I have a little thing about Christmas, and I suppose my dad would have called it rent-a-crowd season, that people only prickle their conscience at Christmas. But I think we've been working so hard, all of us together, all through this year in particular, because of the pandemic. The beauty of Christmas is that we try and make it a little bit brighter in a very dark year. Thank you all for that.
Right. Good evening, everybody. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here, and great partners, great donors. I think will certainly bode well to bring us together for Christmas. My presentation tonight is quite short, and it's to detail the administrative support for this joint Christmas campaign, and also to share a special request for asylum seekers who are living in Lisdoonvarna. Just to give you a little bit of background and context about Serve the City and why we're involved with this. So, first of all, we're a registered charity in Ireland. Typically, we span 3 counties, and I recently started working in Cote Clare. Our projects, also affected by COVID, have been in the past home improvement, deep cleaning, painting and decluttering projects, also garden rescue. And then a big portion of what we do each year is to focus on social inclusion, which my colleagues have run extremely well in for quite a while. We believe in a very strong professional relationship with all of the volunteer centers, and that's how we came together as a think tank and as creators of this amazing campaign. Over and above that, Serve the City responded to the community call earlier in 2020, and we've pioneered a lot of campaigns throughout the year. They've been socially responsible and legally permissible, and we all know and understand the drill. But for Serve the City, what's been incredible is being able to operate and to coordinate during a very challenging year where some charities have not been able to operate. Our mutually beneficial partnership with Kelly through the Ivy Trust and through St. Patrick's, I believe it's achieved an enormous amount this year, and it works in terms of having both partners together. And so finally, we've partnered with Dublin City Volunteer Centre. This is to provide administration, logistics, and donation management for this incredible campaign. Moving on. So just by way of introduction, I think for everybody on the call and for everybody that is indeed suffering in communities and facing a different Christmas to ever before, I think this has been a shocking year for everybody across this beautiful island. I think we all have our own stories to tell. We have our own experiences. And from my perspective as a charity administrator, I've seen some of the real side effects of this pandemic. It's been tough at times to know that people have gone through what they've gone through and have suffered all manner of things, from just isolation to lack of support, lack of community engagement, and again, the mental health challenges of what is now coming up for a 9-month run of living life very, very differently. My presentation today is not about prioritizing one person over another. I believe that the compassion and the solidarity of the Irish nation is powerful beyond measure. And the reason we use that slide on Serve the City is that our volunteers have made the most incredible difference to this great nation over 9 months. And from my perspective, this is a huge shout out to them and a massive thank you for what they've done. This presentation is about hope. Excuse the play on words. I'd like to try and make Christmas better for a few people. I will support it from an administrative perspective and hope to work with each of you to unite and make 2020 special still. The difficulty is that I can't do it alone. In fact, none of us on the call tonight can do it alone. And that is why I need to ask for your help. We need to ask for your help. And as a collective team and people that really want to do something wonderful for this great nation over Christmas, I hope we can ask for your support tonight and going forward. I'd like to share a very short story about the wonderful people of Lisdoonvarna. There are 120 asylum seekers that live in this quaint little town, beautiful part of the world, very close to the wild Atlantic. Lisdoonvarna has its own rhythm, its own vibe, and it's extremely seasonal. So October to March every year, the city, this little town, I should say, it literally closes to coincide with the winter months. So when I say it literally closes, I want to emphasize 2 words, literally and close, because that's exactly what happened. The sad thing is that in March, a lot of the hotels took down the signs that said they're closed winter, and 2 days later they put them back up, saying they're closed until 2021. A lot of the pubs, we don't have many, but a lot of the pubs did not reopen. Hotels remain closed, so did the coffee shops. Employment dried up and the festival was cancelled, and had quite a big impact on the community that I'm speaking about tonight. In addition to which, bus services closed down to quite a large extent, also reduced schedules, reduced capacity. So the ability for people to get to work if they relied on public transport was tough, difficult. This year is coming to an end for all of us. Money is short, I think, for everybody. Patience is thin, hope is uncertain, but maybe we can do something about it. At the King Thomond Direct Provision Centre, Christmas is a massive celebration, and hopefully we can make it just that special. There are many different views about direct provision and as the asylum process in Ireland. I like to focus on one perspective, and that is that people are here in this beautiful country to help their children grow up to be safe and to live some kind of happy life with a defined future. At the centre, there are 50 children, representing South Africa, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, through to Georgia, Morocco, Albania. And whilst these great nations don't live in harmony on the African continent, they certainly do live that way here in Lisdoonvarna. I'd like to stress as well that the postal services, which affect quite a large number of the residents, have been obliterated in 2020. Some of it due to corruption and state capture in different countries, but also COVID-19 has hampered this across across the continent. It's not on post, and there is a big difference, and I'd like to stress about that. My sarcasm is going to come back in here, but Lisdoonvarna is not known for its retail therapy. There is one tiny little mace and an even smaller spa. They go out of their way, but they really are just essential shops. So the ability to buy things such as Christmas jumpers, to buy books for people's children, for families, etc., doesn't exist. Bus services are tight. And then one thing I'd also like to stress is that online shopping is not necessarily first-hand experience for a lot of asylum seekers. Literacy challenges, online banking, online shopping, it's not something that comes immediately as it does for the rest of us that are able to do this every day. The big thing from my side is that it's Christmas Jumper Day on the 11th of December. I think it would be sensational to have the children of Lisdoonvarna celebrated together. Their playgrounds have been closed, schools have been closed. It's been tough. And again, I'm not trying to prioritize one person over another. I'm just simply sharing a story. I think to have the children decorated, dressed up, all full of Christmas cheer on the 11th of December, lasting until Santa arrives, would be just wonderful. To that end, I need to ask for some help, please. I'm prepared to put in all the work that I can from an administrative perspective, but I'm not at the heart of the retail sector or the donation center. Together for Christmas, it's a surprise in terms of what we're going to be doing, and that is not only just from my side, but also some of the other guest speakers, my colleagues this evening. We've got a good professional relationship with the centre management here in Lisdoonvarna. Together with your help, I'd like to bring Christmas together for 50 children. I'm hoping that donations can leave Dublin on the 8th of December, We are headquartered, thanks to Edwina's help, at Third Space in Smithfield. We've got a list of jumper sizes and genders. We're expecting, I think, 11 babies to be born between now and Christmas. So there's all manner of people that are getting on board and asking for help, which I think is just delightful. Our team is a great partnership. I can't stress that enough. It's just an absolute pleasure to work with everybody on the call tonight. From my perspective, the awesome angels at the Dublin City Volunteer Centre will make all the difference. In addition to it, Julie, who we hear from today, her and I work very closely to catalogue donations, and this has gone across the Critical campaign and will be the same for Together for Christmas. My email address is there. Edwina's already put into the chat that we'll be sharing all the logistics. I'm a really switched on guy. Always have a phone in my hand, much to my son's dismay, but I will get back to you. I'll let you know what's going on. I will sort things out. It's just kind of my personality, and that's really the way we work. So, one special request and one general request. I'm looking for some assistance from a courier, a transport company, to help get shipments not only from Co-Dublin down to Co-Clare, but also within Co-Dublin out to Kelly's part of the world, and then north to which Lucy will cover shortly. And secondly, it would be just fantastic to be able to bring all of the things that we're speaking about tonight to the Christmas tree, to make sure that everybody has an absolutely wonderful Christmas at the end of a really trying year. So from my side, without any further ado, take care, stay positive, test negative, and believe in the power of tomorrow.
To the residents there at Balseskin, and I'll tell you guys more about what Balseskin is and what's happening there and why the donations are needed. So firstly, I'm just going to tell you guys just a little bit about the Jesuit Refugee Service so you can get an idea of who we are and what we do. And then I'll tell you about Balseskin and yeah, why the donations are needed. Thanks, Kristen. So the Jesuit Refugee Service, we're an international organisation based in 56 countries around the world. We started 40 years ago. It was our anniversary this year. And the catalyst for the organisation starting was the plight of the Vietnamese boat people. So here in Ireland, we've a small enough team, and we work in advocacy and research with the aim of improving the rights and reception conditions for people seeking asylum in Ireland. We also conduct outreach to around 20 accommodation centres across Ireland. So we'll sit and meet with people who are seeking asylum, see what's happening for them, see what's going on, and then we'll help them in the ways that we can. And then we also have an orientation project, and that is based in Balseskin Reception Centre. What we do there is we help people get set up, so things that they might need like a lawyer or a PPS, but we also run classes and workshops in conjunction with different community groups and individual volunteers that support well-being. So people will be doing things like English classes, yoga and art therapy and things like that, just to support their mental well-being a bit. Just say the photo that's on this is part of our summer project, which is run every year, and it's where we do a summer camp for the kids who are living in the reception centre and a direct provision centre in Dublin, and we bring them to places like Dublin Zoo and lots of other things. So now I'll just tell you guys a little bit about Balseskin and what it is and what's going on there. Kristen, if you may. Thank you. So like I said, Balseskin is the National Reception Centre. So when you put in your application for asylum, you're going to be given a bed in Balseskin Reception Centre, and you'll stay there for a couple of weeks to a couple of months, and then you'll be moved on to more permanent accommodation, like as Brad was talking about down in Lisdoonvarna. So yeah, there's lots of different people there. There's single people, there's couples, and there's families. And there's such a wave of different nationalities at different times. So at the moment, I mean, there's just a mix of people from everywhere, and it changes from week to week what is the greatest population of Balseskin at the time. yeah, so all the residents there are new to Ireland and they are seeking asylum. Life there now, like for all of us, is a bit more restrictive, just to keep up social distancing. So unfortunately, like the classes and the workshops that I mentioned, we can't run them at the moment, because people can't be in rooms together mixing. But so people are trying to get outside, and we have a community garden there, and people are getting out doing gardening or on the football pitches or just going for walks themselves. Or some people are keeping themselves entertained in their rooms with books and crafts and things that they can do. And just to comment on the photo. Oh, and at the moment, just with the population there, it's about 300 people, and we have about 50 children there as well. So this photo is the winner of our Balseskin photo competition that we ran this year in the first lockdown. It was taken by one of our younger residents, Caesar, who is 9, and it was entitled The Beatles in Balseskin. So it's not a picture of the reception centre, but close enough. He did a pretty good job. So yeah, that's what that is there. So I'll just tell you maybe why the donations are needed and why we're so happy to be part of this initiative as well. Thanks. Not much on the slide, but so firstly, just in relationship, I know Kristen is going to go through all the different roles, but I know just to mention the cards and the coats as one of the things. Firstly, as to the cards, I know a lot of people in the centre are feeling quite isolated at the moment. Like people in Balseskin have just arrived to Ireland, so they've left their loved ones behind, they've left their community behind, and with the national restrictions, they don't have the same opportunity to go out and connect with people. And so receiving a card can make a person feel just a little bit more welcome, and it could be just make them feel a little less alone. And I would encourage you, if you're brave enough, to try write it in another language. I know Kristen's going to have on the role description the different languages that we'd encourage you to write in, because it can be pretty cool just finding out about a different language and discovering it, but also pretty special for someone to receive as well, a letter in their own language. And like I said, I know there's a lot of other items as well, but I just want to highlight coats. It's a huge and really just a massive need that we have at the reception centre. People are arriving in without warm clothing. An Irish winter can be quite nasty, and every day I meet people who need coats, and yeah, it's heartbreaking to see someone with such a basic need not being met. So if you can, please do give, and thank you. And if you have any questions, please fire them below. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was just such a lovely, lovely photograph from Caesar. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think we'll just power on. Just quickly, Lucy, coats for all sizes, is that what is needed?
Yes, like I said, we've different people, all shapes and sizes. So please, yeah.
All shapes and sizes, and I might mention this later on, but I can just mention it here as well. Men, women, children, warm coats, preferably new, but could be second hand. Absolutely. If they are well
good quality, warm, brilliant.
Great, thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you, everyone. I know this is the much anticipated portion of the presentation, so I will not dawdle, and I will go ahead and tell you all about these roles and how you can be involved. So we have 3 strands of the campaign, and I'm just going to highlight each of them, and then I'm going to tell you how you can get this, information in a nice packaged form, and where you can drop things off and all that jazz. So the first strand of the campaign is sending season's greetings. As mentioned, a letter, a card, something that will kind of reach across that gap and let people know that they are remembered, whether they are in direct provision, whether they're in a domestic violence refuge, whether they're in the homeless hostel. We would love to have cards and letters, get your kids involved, get the whole family involved, making cards, writing in them. We'd love to have them from all of you. You can mail them in, you can drop them off. I'll talk about dropping off in a minute, but I'll just say you can also designate those cards for any one of those 3 groups, or you can designate them. You could send us 3 cards, 1 for each group. However you want to do things, multiple cards are fine. A nice cheerful card is lovely, because if you keep in mind, someone who's living in a 1-bedroom situation, they're staying in their room a lot of the times, a nice cheerful bright glittery card could really spike things up for the holidays. So I'm quite partial to that, and we actually have some tips on the blog that I wrote because I'm partial to it. We have some tips up on our blog to help you get started if you're thinking that writing a card is a little bit daunting. But that's the first strand. The second strand is donating items, including those Christmas jumpers that Brad spoke about, the jackets that were mentioned, books for kids as well as for adults and for teenagers, and toiletry items. So as we mentioned, these are lovely things that have all been identified by our partner organizations as being things that are needed. It's easy, I think, when you talk about making donations to kind of think about what you yourself would want. Well, these are all been identified as things that are wanted, that are needed. So everything from very practical, simple items like toiletries, feminine hygiene items, razors, shampoo, soap, the whole range of toiletry items would be very much appreciated. As for books, we're looking for activity books, coloring books for kids, including crayons, coloring pencils, markers, all that kind of thing, as well as books, fiction for teenagers and adults, things that could help to pass some time and keep people occupied. It would be really lovely. I think a lovely idea would be to think about the books that maybe you've enjoyed this year, the books that your children enjoy, and to maybe make a gift of those books for someone who is having a rougher Christmas maybe. Lucy mentioned the jackets in all sizes and the Christmas jumpers. As Brad mentioned, we do have a list of the size, the different sizes and everything, and we can send that on to you when you apply for this role. So just to move on really quickly to the third strand of the campaign. The third strand of the campaign is all around crafting. So many of us have been maybe doing a bit more crafting this year as we've been home. If you knit, if you crochet, if you sew, any kind of handmade gifts would be such a wonderful thing to share with someone who is living in one of these circumstances. Any kind of handmade item that would just really be a lovely thing to share your skills, your talents, and your handiwork with people at Christmas. So those are the 3 kinds of things that we are looking for, and we would love to have those items from you as a gift to others at this season. Our partner Third Space, which is a cafe in Smithfield, it's a social enterprise. It's a really great place. They have very generously offered to be kind of our post box for this campaign. They're open for takeaway coffee. Just a suggestion if you feel like a coffee when you're dropping off your items. But you can also post your letters there. or if you're not able to get out, you could post things to them as well. We're asking that you please include your name and email on a separate sheet with your donation. Now, I've rattled through a lot of these things. You're probably having a lot of questions and you're probably saying, Third Space Cafe, do I have to write this down? Where is this? Julie, why do you expect me to know where this is? I don't expect you to know where this is. What I would suggest to you is that you visit our website, volunteerdublincity.ie. We have all the details of these roles up on that website, and if you're registered with us already, you can register your interest for the role just like you would for any other volunteer role. And myself and Kristen and the rest of the placement team will be in touch with you to share with you the exact details of how to make your donation, with tips, suggestions, those sizes for the jumpers, the address for the cafe, and how exactly to address and donate your items. We would love to hear from you as well if you have any questions or any other kinds of connections that you'd like to share with us. You know, if your company, if your office, your club, your church would like to organize a campaign to collect items, we would love to hear from you. So you can email us at info@volunteerdublincity.ie. That's info@volunteerdublincity.ie. And if you have any questions about items to donate, you're welcome to get in touch with us there as well. I would just reiterate what Kelly said earlier, as far as, you know, I think a really lovely way to approach this campaign is to think about, you know, if this was a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a niece or a nephew, you know, what would you want them to receive for Christmas? And to think about that when you're putting your donations together. We really thank you all so much for your generosity. I'm so pleased that so many of you have joined us this evening to hear about this campaign and to hear about what it is we're trying to achieve this Christmas season. And I hope that you'll join us. I'm just gonna have a little look over here at the chat if Kristen, if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. I've just been looking at the chat intently here. Thank you so much for explaining this in slight more detail. Now, we have a few questions here in terms of a few more specific things. And one here is, would it be appropriate to send religious cards? Which I would say definitely, and I'm sure Brad and Lucy would agree on this, there's people of all faith will be receiving these cards. So if that's something that's really relevant to you and something that you would like to give, I would certainly say that that's absolutely fine. Do you, Brad or Lucy, do you want to pitch in on that?
I think that'll be absolutely lovely. Just to emphasize slightly more, we're targeting the Christmas jumpers for both Alsace as well as children living at Kingstown and Lisdoonvarna. So in total, it's around 100 jumpers, and we'd love those to have Secret Santa cards as well that will go out to them. Obviously, there are some sensitivities in direct provision centers in terms of people's faith and what they believe in, but from our perspective, and I'm sure I'm speaking on Lucy's behalf here as well, we will screen these, make sure that the right cards and the right gifts are going to the right person. We have close relationships with the center management in both centers, and the same will apply indeed for the men's hostel in Dublin 8. So there will be a great focus of the volunteers behind the scenes, sorting, packing, repacking, distributing, and liaising with direct provision centres and with the men's hostel as well, in addition to which that will include the donations for critical.
Thank you so much for that, Brad. And I know there was a question about, will there be someone at Third Space to check information and stuff like that? If you're dropping stuff, if you're either sending stuff to the Third Space or you're dropping it off, there will be a donation box at Third Space, and if you're dropping things off in a bag or parcel, we ask you to, like Judy explained, to leave a note with your name and your email address on it. We will then have volunteers going in at a certain times to go through the parcels and take note of names and email addresses, so we're able to track and thank you for your donations and things like that. Julie, did you see any other questions there you wanted to pitch in while we wrote this?
I was just noticing that we'd had a couple of questions there. One was asking, do you address someone in particular on the cards? And then someone else has asked, is it a good idea to say where you want to send the gifts to? And it's kind of a similar sort of answer for those. For the cards, we would say, you can just address it, a dear friend, or from our home to you, or something like that. I mean, just general kind of address as far as the letter is concerned. But in both cases, I just say that you can, when you put that sheet in with your items, with your name and your email address, you can say, I would like these items to go to the homeless hostel. I would like them to go to women and children in domestic violence refuge. If there's one of those groups that you would really like your items to go to, you can put that on that note, and we'll take that into consideration when we're sorting. We'll make sure that everything goes where it's supposed to go. So you can absolutely designate those items when you're making the donation. And equally, if you don't mind, to have your items just go to the population where they're needed, then that's grand too. We'll take care of it all, and we'll, as Brad said, we're very much committed to making sure that this is something where the right things are getting to the right people. So there will be effort on our side in that regard.